Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. We're out here at Cahuilla Creek today riding the 2019 Honda CRF250RX. So this is an all-new lineup model for Honda this year, but it's heavily based off the 2019 CRF250R motocross bike. It enjoys all the same upgrades per se because it's starting from that as a base point as the motocross bike, being a smaller throttle body this year, different cams, head pipes, intake and exhaust porting, and its own ECU settings, where they really try to copy what came off the motocross bike and improve the low to mid power of the Honda that's already known as a screaming engine. Now what the RX has going differently for it is its own suspension settings, softer fork and shock spring, its own ECU mapping, along with a larger fuel tank, 18-inch rear wheel, and off-road specific tires. All this takes all the great aspects they have from the motocross bike, including the chassis, which has been untouched, and try to mold that bike into as much of an off-road race machine as they can. So the first thing I noticed jumping on the trails was the excellent chassis, the ergonomics, and the great rider triangle that the Honda has. The foot peg to seat position to the handlebar is just this really good balance. It's great to ride sitting down, standing up. The transitions are really clean. And then the chassis itself offers great traction, front and rear, along with being stable and comfortable. Just having a really good overall balance that transfers into being an off-road motorcycle. And this is the exact takeover from the R. We're not even talking about different engine mounts or anything. They've carried over that entire chassis. What they have changed is the suspension. They've dropped the spring rates front and rear, and they've changed the valving. They want something you can hit your local motocross track on, go jump on GP courses, go ride some off-road, but still at the same time have enough comfort that you can crawl through the rocks, get across those tree roots, and not feel like the bike's gonna completely deflect like you'd find on a moto model. Now onto the aspect of the bike I could say I was the most worried about, the engine. As I stated before, in a motocross trim, this bike is a screamer. It doesn't have a lot of roll-on torque, so that really worried me coming in off-road conditions because the only thing different is the ECU mapping. Now it is really amazing nowadays how much you can change that ECU mapping, and it really caught me by surprise on this bike. Like I said, the motocross model has a little bit of a delay down low, not really much roll on, and it builds into a very explosive mid-range at the top, which wouldn't be that usable off-road. It'd be very hard to control and hard to maintain the bike underneath you. They've done everything they can with the mapping to make the engine more linear, where prior it would have a real dead spot and then peak up really quick in RPMs. Now the bike builds constantly. It just feels very linear through the entire power band. Even when you're lugging it on tight trails in third gear, there is more response or connectivity to the throttle. I was able to ride the motocross bike and the RX back-to-back today, and the motocross bike is just really dead at low RPMs and takes a while to build up RPMs before it spikes with a lot of power. This RX definitely builds RPM slow. It's still not a very torquey engine, but it rolls on really easy. You feel like as you turn the throttle, the bike is responding and it builds those RPMs consistently. It makes it very tractable for all the conditions we were able to ride today. So who or what is this bike good for? Some people might look at it and think, oh, this is just a trail or an off-road guy's bike. But no, it really can be that everyday machine. It can replace your motocross bike if you only want one toy in the garage. In my case, I went as far as taking this bike and the motocross model out on the track to compare the lap times. And yes, I am about a second to a second and a half quicker on the motocross model, but I was surprised is this bike was more consistent lap to lap. The softer, more supple suspension and the more linear power is easier to use lap to lap, and I think for quite a few of the general riders out there, they wouldn't see much of a time difference between this and the motocross bike on the track, and they'd probably be able to ride this bike just as fast, even longer, along with having the ability to ride such a wide range of trails and off-road races and basically anything that their heart desires.